Hi everyone, I'm now moving into the sources of law. We are looking into the second part of the sources of law. We have looked through the unwritten law. Okay, and now we are looking into the written law, which is federal constitution, state constitution, legislation, and subsidiary legislation. So we're going to go into the four categories under the written law. First one, we're going to look into the federal constitution. When we talk about federal constitution, we are looking into something which is a law that is contained in a formal document. So what is constitution? It is a single written document having this legal status, which establishes the state and set out the structure and powers of the state. Now, in Malaysia, we have two types of constitution, which is federal constitution and state constitution. Now, Patrick Henry, a debater during the American Revolution, said constitution is not an instrument for government to restrain people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government. Now, when you're looking into the federal constitution, there are few basic features of constitution which actually lays down all the laws, lays down the rights of the citizen, particularly the rights which should not and cannot be taken away by the government. And if you're looking into the constitution itself, Article 4, Clause 1 provides that constitution is the supreme law of the federation. Okay, constitution is the supreme law of the federation, and any law which passed after 1957 and if it's inconsistent with the constitution shall be void to the extent of inconsistency. Now, we are looking into the federal constitution as a whole. Federal constitution has about 183, which addresses a lot of aspects. It looks into the states, religion, and the law of federation. It also looks into the citizenship, termination of citizenship, the conference of rulers, distribution of the powers of the legislative, executive, and it also looks into the judiciaries and all other matters. I would suggest all of you to get a copy of the Federal Constitution, and if you can't get it down, you can always download the document from the internet. And I would like to suggest all of you to actually download the whole of the Federal Constitution. At least you know what are your rights. Okay. Now, when we talk about Federal Constitution, we talk about at least about 8 basic rights. Not 8 basic rights, but 8 basic features. Now, what are those features? Federal Constitution establishes Malaysia as a federation. It also establishes Malaysia as constitutional monarchy, establishes Malaysia as having parliamentary democracy, provide Islam as a federation, religion of the federation, provides for the freedom of liberties, also provides for supremacy of constitution, rule of law, doctrine of separation of powers. Now, we are looking into all these basic features one by one. Now, first one, what does it mean by Malaysia as a federation? Okay, now a federation is a state comprised of a number of self-governing regions. Now, how many states are there in Malaysia? There are about 14 states. It also reflects in our flags. Okay, so it refers to the self-governing regions. Okay, all these regions, which is states, that they're united by the central, which is what we call federal. So in a federation, self-governing status of a component of states is constitutionally enshrined, and it may not be altered by unilateral decisions. So no other central government, no other law of the states can be actually be altered or amended by the central government. We have these particular methods of altering the rights of the people. Now, but next feature, we are looking into constitutional monarchy and what is constitutional monarchy. So basically, when we talk about monarchy, we talk about the monarch as the head of the state. Okay. Now, unlike some constitutional monarchy, Malaysia has a constitutional monarchy. This means that the monarch's power, rights and responsibility is governed by the constitution. Everything is written. Everything is lays down in the federal constitution. Okay. Okay, another basic feature of the federal constitution is the Malaysia as the parliamentary democracy. So, a parliamentary system is distinguished by executive branch of government, so being dependent on the direct or indirect support of the legislative parliament. Okay, so basically we have this vote, we have these general elections whereby the citizens are free to elect their own representative in the parliament. And the other features of constitution is the Islam is provided to be the religion of the federation, but not as a theocratic state. So basically, you are not forcing anybody to actually practice Islam. So at the same time, you also guarantee the freedom of other religion being practiced in Malaysia. The other features, which is very interesting, it is fundamental liberties. Now, we have about 13, we have 2, 3, 4, we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have about 9 fundamental liberties, which starts from Article 5 to Article 13. Now, Article 5 talks about right to life and liberties. Article 6 talks about slavery and labor force. Article 7 talks about protection against retrospective criminal law or repeated trials, or what we call in Latin terms res judicata. Article 8 talks about equality before the law and equal protection of the law. Article 9 talks about no citizen shall be banished from the federation. Article 10 talks about citizens' right to freedom of speech and expression. Article 11 talks about right to profess and practice religion. Article 12 talks about rights to education. And Article 13 talks about the rights to property. So these are fundamental liberties, and as a Malaysian, you should know your rights. The next feature is the supremacy of constitution. When we talk about supremacy, we talk about the highest position of the power. So basically, when we say law is supreme, meaning we are looking into the law as the authority in Malaysia. So basically, in Malaysia, the federal constitution is supreme. So whatever laws that has been approved by the parliament after 1967, we should abide by the law. Okay. When constitution is the supreme law of the country, so when we refer to constitution, we are referring to all the laws that has been approved by the parliament. Now, any laws made before the Merdeka Day actually dealt by the Article 162, to which the court or tribunal will apply the law with modification as it necessary to actually in line with the federal constitution. So post Merdeka Day, if it's inconsistency, the law shall be void. Okay, despite the constitution being the supreme law of the country, but when we talk about implementation, interpretation of the law, so basically we give the courts the power to actually review whatever the act done by the legislative and executive. So when the legislative and executive violate the constitution, the court may declare such act as ultra virus and void. For those actually going to learn administrative law, you're going to look into all these ultra virus in detail compared to what we are looking at into the in the Malaysian legal system. Now, how do we invalidate the legislation? So basically, you may invalidate the legislation probably by saying that the legislation has no power. You did not enact the law according to the procedure. It is inconsistent, or probably the state law is also inconsistent with federal law. So you are looking more on this matter when you are doing the administrative law. Now, when we talk about supremacy of the constitution, there are two types of supremacy. One is parliamentary supremacy, which does not happen in Malaysia. It happens in UK because they don't have any written constitution. But when we talk about constitutional supremacy, we talk about Malaysian. That's all about the basic feature. The other one on the constitution supremacy. Now we're looking into the other part, which is amendment. Can you amend constitution? Yes, you can amend constitution. There are about 4 methods of amendment. If you want to amend, it requires 2/3 of the majority. It can also be amended by simple majority. It also, some provisions can be amended, but you require the consent of the Conference of Rulers. And some parts you also require the consent of the Yang di-Pertua Negeri. It depends. It depends on the provisions. The other basic feature of the federal constitution is the rule of law, whereby basically the rule of law refers to the fact that no one is above the law. So if you're looking into what does it mean by rule of law, Professor A.V. Dicey in his book, he actually proposed 3 basic concepts. So there should when we talk about rule of law, there should be absence of arbitrary power or supremacy of law. So basically, no one is above the law. And the second feature of the rule of law is equality before of law. Basically, everybody is equal. They have the same duty to obey the law, right? And lastly, constitution is the result of the ordinary law of the land, means here that whatever legislation we have here is decision probably by the courts, right? Previously, it follows that we have seen that the law in Malaysia actually derived originally from UK. So basically, these are all a creation, interpretation by the courts basically. So there are 3 basic features, and whatever happened here, so the court will actually interpret the law to suit the current situation. That one is the third part on the rule of law. And the last basic features of federal constitution is the doctrine of separation of powers. So there are 3 types of powers of the government. First one, legislative, executive, and judicial. So basically, there should not be any overlapping between all these powers. So they should be separate. So if we look into who are the legislative, they are the parliament, executive, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, prime minister and the cabinet, and judiciary are the courts. So I suggest you look at each component in detail. You can look at Article 44 for legislative, Article 32 to 7 for the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, Article 38 for the Conference of Rulers, executive and cabinet in under Article 39 to 43. And you also are advised to look at the what are the parliament, okay, the houses of parliament, Dewan Negara and Dewan Rakyat, and you look into the functions of the both the functions of the Dewan, which is Dewan Negara and Dewan Rakyat. So Dewan Negara, which is the Senate, Dewan Rakyat is the